Well, normally you would hear me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. And I suppose I could still say that. But as you can tell, this is a brand new sort of second intro into this fantastic interview that I was able to do with Brady Gaster, who is a PM on the SignalR team. That he came in, talked an awful lot about SignalR, in particular on ASP.NET Core. Now, the good news is I have 98% of our show recorded for Web Wednesday, and you're going to see it here in just a moment. But unfortunately, I hit record just like a couple of minutes late. So as a result, you're going to have a little bit of a jarring effect as we jump right on into Brady answering a question and talking a little bit about how it is that he got into Microsoft and into becoming a developer and all of that good stuff, and also how he got involved with SignalR. Now, real quick, for anybody who's not familiar with SignalR, SignalR is a wonderful framework to help you manage real-time communication with your web applications. This was, I think, a rather fun little interview. Brady's just a lot of fun to chat with, and I think you'll see that. So hopefully you'll enjoy that, and definitely check the links in the description below for more information on SignalR. So thanks for checking this out, and without any further ado, here's Brady.
And then I came to Microsoft, and I started hosting Channel 9 shows, very much like what you're doing now, doing advocacy work all over the world. And then I moved into the engineering team, and through an interesting series of jumps, became the SignalR PM. So I actually work with David and Damien now and a bunch of other really fantastic people on the .NET team. And I kind of focus on SignalR and cloud stuff. So, if you're building apps for Azure using .NET, I'm your advocate. Ping me, ping Shane Boyer. Shane will ping me. And then we'll see if we can make the experience as good as possible for you. So that's kind of my very condensed version of the really long story you don't want to hear right now.
No, I absolutely love that. I didn't know that you were an MCT as well. I was an MCT for many years.
Cool.
And that was also how I discovered SignalR, because it was in, and I'm not going to be able to remember the course number, but it was actually in one of the ASP.NET courses. And so I remember being able to demo that to the classroom, and it was this mind-boggling thing, because because of everything that you highlighted, that it would automatically thunk down if it needed to, and it also just from a development standpoint just feels so natural
Really
as a way to program. So
yeah, that's great. Man, thank you for being an MCT. I don't hear that from many people. Being an MCT is like an unsung hero job, dude. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of other tests. Not an easy road. So yeah.
No, it's really not, for anybody who's watching who isn't familiar with MCT. So MCT is a Microsoft Certified Trainer, and one of the rules about it is if you were going to teach a particular topic, you have to be certified in that topic, and some of those exams are really hard to try and get past. So it's definitely a fair amount of work, and then just like preparing and being in the classroom and doing that for a week. And especially, I don't know if you did this, but I was independent for a fair number of years, and that's just I was on the road for 40 weeks out of the year doing that.
Wow.
It was a tough experience, but it's one that I really miss even today.
Yeah, I was actually I was shadowing a trainer, old friend of mine, who's at the time, I think he was the 14th most certified person in the world.
Okay.
Like, he just loved getting certifications, but he also loved helping people get certifications. And I remember this was kind of when Microsoft went through the evolution of creating, I believe they were called adaptive tests.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just like, remember all these terms and get it right or not. It was like, you kind of had to know the tech to pass the test. I remember this gentleman, he got a question one day in the ASP.NET class. He actually said he was talking about the test. I think it was the MCAT and the MCSD and all these different things. And I remember he hired me to be a trainer, and he was like, "So you have to get an MCT," and I went, "Oh, cool, good. I can do that." Like, what's involved? And he was like, "Well, you have to get your MCAT, which is like 3 tests. Then you have to get your MCSD, which is like 3 more tests. There's 2 elective tests. Then you have to go do like an MCT course." And I was like, "Cool." And he was like, "We've got you on the schedule in 3 weeks." I was like, "Wait, what?"
Oh, wow.
So I had to take 9 tests in 3 weeks. So, yeah, that was fun. But here's the point. In that ASP.NET class, when we were talking about this, one of the students was like, "Well, Dan, you've written how many books? You've taught classes. Like, I've taken 4 or 5 classes with you. I know you do consulting work. Like, if anybody should be able to pass that test, it's you." And my co-teacher was like, "You're totally right." And we work in I think it was a Sylvan Prometric. Was that the right term? Testing facility. Well, so I could take the test today after I get done, teaching you. So he went over to the desk, and like, talk about a bull move, man. This guy goes over to the desk, registers for the class registers for the test that day at 5:00, walks out of the class he's teaching at 4:45, goes in and passes that thing with, I think he got like a 95 on it.
Good for him.
Yeah. So he like proved to everybody, and the next day he was like, "I passed the test," and they were like, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "Today I'm taking the web services test," and he passed it. And he did that for all 5 tests, and he passed every one of them. Like, click, click, click. It took him like a half hour for each one. And it's not that like, the point is not that like he could do it because he's a this and a that and a this and a that. It's like, if you use the tech, you'll pass the test.
Right.
As long as you really know what you're doing.
Yep.
Clearly I did not know what I was doing. I had to retake 2 of them, but it was one was the SQL test, and one was the what was the process methodology that I don't think we talk about too much anymore. Microsoft Solutions Framework.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, get your certifications. They're a good thing.
They really are. Yes. Yeah. Especially if you're, getting into the industry, go get certified.
Yeah, definitely.
Go get certified.
And if you're already in the industry, you should be able to pass the test.
Yeah.
So
I have a question then. Let's get right on into it. What so you talked a little bit about like kind of SignalR and so forth, but from a developer's perspective, I guess, like why would I want to use SignalR? Why wouldn't I, especially with WebSockets being so prevalent, just start programming WebSockets instead?
Have you ever programmed against WebSockets?
I have, and it's a bit of a clunky experience.
SignalR's not.
Okay.
So there's your first answer. The second answer is you will find some clients and some servers out there who, for insert reason here, don't support WebSockets. Somebody might have an old browser. It still happens, believe me. Also, some lower level devices don't necessarily support WebSockets. So like, there are some smaller devices, watches, et cetera, who might not have support for, first class support for WebSockets. So in those cases, they would back off and they would use something like long polling. I found that this usually works better with a set of slides that I brought, which is such a PM move. But do you mind if I pull up some
Not
slides?
at all. Okay. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Let me hit this real quick. Now I've only got 2 monitors, and I think that's on the right monitor. So if you feel free to just speak and interrupt me because I won't see you. So that's fine.
Okay.
So, real quick, like kind of a crash course in what SignalR is. So I want to go ahead and just click through a couple of slides. So this is kind of your long polling idea. So in SignalR, the first thing we would do is we would do a negotiation, which this is all over the SignalR documentation. I'll give you a link for that later. And essentially what we do is the client will reach out to the server and do a negotiate request. The server, ASP.NET Core server, will basically tell it whether or not it supports WebSockets. So if it doesn't support WebSockets, what we do is we go ahead and we start up with long polling. It's kind of like WebSockets are first, then we'll try server sent events, and if either one of those don't work, then we back off and we try long polling, because long polling is it's a request response model. So in long polling, essentially what happens is this client would make a request to the server. Server's going to fire an event. make a response, and then immediately the client's going to make another request. You've probably done this, early on before we had WebSockets, before we had SignalR. And this is really like your MetaEquiv refresh or like a JavaScript refresh, or, you just make a series of AJAX calls and a schedule. So we've all had to do this kind of thing before. At one point, it got better, and we had the concept of server sent events, in which case you could just create a new event source. And then whenever an event happens on the server, it actually sends a message back out to the client. This is kind of your if you don't have WebSockets, you want to have SSE, but long polling is always going to be your all the way back off. But in the perfect world, your client and your server would both have WebSockets. And in WebSockets, basically what happens is, you make that negotiate request. The server says, I support WebSockets. You're good. The client says, cool, I'd like you to upgrade this connection and make it a WebSocket connection. The moment it does that, it switches protocols to WebSockets, and now you are partying in real time. And now all the messages just continue to go back and forth. So this is kind of like most times with your new browsers, this is what you're going to see because of the fact that, most clients and servers actually already support, this kind of an experience. So one thing I'd like to point out, though, is it's always fun when you can see what you can do with it. So let me kind of show you just kind of a silly little 3D demo that I've got here. And what I'll do is I'll pull open a quick little thing right here. And what I'll do is I'll drag this over. And I know you've got some JavaScript watchers out there. So, you won't want to look at my JavaScript code in gratuitous detail. I'm not that great at it. We'll get to that later. But this is essentially kind of a 3D rendering, or a 3D series of images stitched together using Three.js, which is a fantastic 3D kind of JavaScript engine. And what I can do with this is go like this, which is pretty neat. It looks great on screen. Basically I have this pane here, and the pane kind of shows all the different images around. Essentially, this is just a series of images that just get kind of stitched all together. Now, what I also have is a control panel. And what I'll do is I'll copy this out and just paste this in and just go to controls. And I'm not going to do it here because I want to be able to I want you to be able to see what's going on my screen. So what I'll do is I'll show you that I've actually got that pulled up on my phone. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I've kind of got the same thing, and I've got an X, Y, and Z slider. So what I'll do is now I'll grab one of those sliders. Let me refresh it and connect again. I grab one of those sliders, and you can see as I move the X slider around, we're actually spinning that on an X axis. When I spin the Y slider around, we're spinning it on a Y axis. And the JavaScript code that I have is old enough that the gyroscope part no longer works because a lot of those APIs have been deprecated. So I have to get back into the code and update that. But eventually what I'll be able to do is show you how I can take my phone and go like this, and that plane will move around. But I'm using kind of some old JavaScript APIs in there that don't really exist anymore. But what I can do is just pull that other page back up again. And what I can do here is just kind of pull this off to the side, and we'll get a couple of these panels open up. So I'll pull that one over here and just kind of do a new browser right here. What you'll see is that for each one of these connected clients, whenever I use this control panel, they're all going to move. So that's kind of what SignalR is for. It's for those interactive experiences where you've got multiple browsers across multiple users, maybe in different places like we are right now. And the idea is that you could actually use SignalR so that when something happens, when an event fires, when somebody does a send or an invoke on this side, we actually have code over here that literally looks like on, and then the event name, and then how to process it. So if you've ever done a lower level WebSocket programming, that's not what it looks like. So this is sort of a hyper simplification of that. It's also something that, you have to give David and Damien a lot of respect. They kind of have this ability to see into the future. And one thing that David said at one point was do you think WebSockets is going to be the last thing? It's of course not. He goes, well, if you're using SignalR, it won't matter because we'll just add whatever the new thing is to it and it'll keep working. So that's one of the reasons for SignalR, the early days, it was because we lacked WebSockets support. Today, it's because like WebSockets is probably not going to be the last thing that we do to enable real time on the web. So if you're programming against SignalR at the point where we add it in, and I'm not saying that we're going to do this. Like, let me just get that out there very quick. Just give you a random idea. Then not saying we're doing this. I've pitched it in the team room and they throw things at me. So I don't know if this will ever come. But if you can imagine something like SignalR over gRPC, again, not proposing that we're doing that, or SignalR over HTTP3 or whatever protocol gets invented next month. That's where, the abstraction layer of SignalR becomes pretty valuable. At that point, you can kind of do more stuff with it. But that's kind of my intro demo. But we're not done with, the demos. I definitely have other stuff that we can walk through. Do you have any questions about what you've seen there? You probably want me to look in the code, huh?
We can look at the code. I do want to ask one real quick question. Is like when you're hitting those slider bars, that's sending a message to all the browsers that were connected as clients, if you will. You do have the ability in SignalR, though, to choose who it is that you're going to send to. So it's not just always going to be broadcast. That if I need to, send a message specifically to one browser or to a group of browsers, that I would be able to do that.
That's true. And I have some fantastic slides from Anthony Chu that I was about to show you that actually exemplify that.
Okay, let's see them.
Before I do that, though, let me actually hop into code for 1 second. And what I'll do is I'll open up this rotation hub. Okay, so this is my rotation hub in that last demo. And there's more code in this demo than I'll show you in kind of the end-to-end as we kind of build stuff up later demo. But what I wanted to show you here is essentially we're talking about C# here, or .NET. So I have this class called a rotation hub, and it inherits from a class called Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR Hub. And this is just like an abstract class. And what it will give you is, if you see here, you've got clients. That's essentially the same thing as me going this dot clients, and then as you called out, in the code that I'm using all, and what that does is that says I want to send a message to all of the clients that happen to be connected to me at this point in time. You might not always want to do that, so in that case, we've got ideas for things like caller and other clients and that kind of stuff. But let me show you what that looks like visually. I think that makes a little bit better kind of an idea. So this is a beautiful slide from Anthony Chu. And what this does, I hope he didn't show you this when he was on the show already.
He didn't.
He didn't? Good. Okay, I want to steal the slides. So essentially we have all these clients. So these might be all the different clients that want to see the 3D thing spinning in space for insert reason here. If I wanted to target all of them, what I could do is I could say clients.all.send a message. So whatever method I'm going to fire. And this is kind of what the code used to look like. And we would just basically send an argument. You can see here that I'm sending a string. You can send it pretty much anything that's, serializable, and it'll just serialize it on the wire. We actually have support, the default is JSON, but we also have support for message pack. So if you wanted to go with message pack, it's smaller, more compressed, probably transmits faster. If you wanted to use message pack, you could actually opt for using the message pack providers, serialization provider, and then it won't serialize your stuff as JSON anymore. So I do want to point that out. So you can send complex objects, but in this case, you can see I'm doing clients.all.send message and then some sort of a parameter. All the clients light up and they get stuff. So what I can do next is I can go right here and I can say I only want to target one user. Now this is what's important. You saw that I had a couple of different browsers open. Each one of those browsers would be targeting me as a user. Like I'm going to be a user. So as long as you can, identify me by my username, if you were to call this, my phone would light up, two browsers would light up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a way for you to target one individual user. If I wanted to, I could target a group. In this case, if I was presenting in Vegas, I might want to target all the people that happen to be in the Vegas group. And in this case, I would just use .groups, put a string in there, and it would actually go out and target all of those individual, the people that are in that group. You do have to add people to groups. So that is something that you would have to do in your own code. And we don't do something like have a list of groups for you. That's something that whenever you add somebody to a group, you would probably also want to add a record to a database saying that that person is in that group, et cetera, et cetera. So I do want to point that out, that we don't do all of the work for you. But we do kind of set it up for you to basically give you the capability of being the signaler. That's essentially what it is. It just gives you the ability to signal between these individual clients.
Okay. So then it sounds like that I, as the developer, get control then over what it is that I want to identify as a group, or how it is that I want to identify users. So if I want to do it, based on an auth principle, or maybe based on a location, or whatever it is, that I have that flexibility to decide how it is that I want to set up my users and how I want to set up my groups.
Yes, that's true. For example, we'll talk about it a little bit today, the Azure Signaler Service. Anthony's way better at that topic than myself. But one of the things that we talk about with the Azure Signaler Service is, like, if you, I think each individual instance can support something like 100,000 concurrent connections, which is pretty good if you think about it. If you want to do more than that, then you have to add instances. So, if you would add an instance like in the East and an instance in the West, maybe what you do is you group your users and you say, if you connect from the East, I'm going to put you in that instance. If you connect from the West, I'm going to put you in that instance. So that's actually one way. If you get into very, very, very high, like high user count type scenarios, that's one scenario where you can actually bifurcate your users and put them into individual instances of your Azure Signaler service. That's also a good way for you to achieve DR. So you can disaster recovery by basically creating multiple instances of that Azure Signaler service. If one gets too full or one goes down for whatever reason, doesn't happen often, then you could back off to the next one. So that capability does exist. It's pretty much all over the Azure Signaler docs. So if you look in the docs, I think it's under the concepts area where it talks about basically DR.
Okay.
So you take a big at that, or scaling out essentially. And we'll talk about normal scale out for Signaler later on in this session. It's a lot easier now with the Azure Signaler service than it was in the old days. I'll talk a little bit about both. But you asked about the APIs. I'll show you right here. Like we talked about earlier, we've got, this is my hub. And right here, I've got clients, and I can do .others, .groups, et cetera, .users, et cetera. And essentially what I would do at that point, and I'll just kind of grab this and copy it out here. And what I can actually do is give it, I think that's a dynamic. So what I can do is literally just give it any method, do work, foo, or I could say 24, and it would actually send that out. Actually, I'm going to do that's what it used to look like. Send async. So in this case, this is when I'm sending a message from the server to the clients. My IntelliSense is getting all messed up. So in this case, I would just give it a name, and that's my method name. And if you think about it, that's almost like, it's not really a method name as much as it is an event name on the client. That makes sense? So you can see here, control locked, control unlocked. Those are almost like events that I'm going to fire. And then I could just send it 42 to answer to all questions. Or I would have to new up an object array. I could do it like that. Being lazy. Just send 42, and I could send Tom. So I can send any series of objects that I want at that point. Getting weird errors. Sorry for my IntelliSense. Now this is how you would send a message to the server. To the clients from the server. So obviously the next step is going to be, how do you actually handle those events that happen to be coming from the server. So what I would do, and look at my awful JavaScript code, my awful old JavaScript code here. If I were to open up real time, what you would see in here is that the first stage that you do is you want to actually create the connection, but we'll get into that in a minute. I'll talk to you about connections in a minute. So think about this side, which is send core async, which is basically just sending an event to the client. And then how do you handle it? Right here, connection dot on. And the first parameter of that is the name of the event that you want to handle. So control locked, control unlocked, clicked whatever, server full, pick your poison. Any event that is going to be fired or sent from here, I can literally just use that same string as the string. Sorry for string magic. You can actually do it over here. And then this is, an expression where I can basically just say, I know what I'm getting back from the server. And I can just basically come up with my event handler and deal with that event argument coming in right here. So like you talked about, like it was fun to show this in class because like people think about all the complexity of like RPC and the complexity of server push. And for the love, the complexity of writing your own protocol in something like WebSockets. What we have here is exactly what you would think you would have to have in, going to use this term loosely, a pub sub kind of an experience or an event-driven experience. I want to send an event to the clients, and I want to handle the event on those clients using whatever logic I have.
It's exactly how it should work.
Yeah, it's insanely simple. I'll show you the one gotcha. From a coding perspective, if you're using the ASP.NET Core side, okay, if you're doing the Azure SignalR service, you don't have the server. So you've got the service, and you can basically fire events out to your clients how you want to. If you're in ASP.NET Core server-side land, what you've got is essentially when you wire it up, you essentially have to do this, which basically dials in all the SignalR stuff on the server. And then if you want to map the route to that hub, this is essentially what you would do on the server as well. This, when I started with SignalR, was the only thing I forgot every single time. I always want to call it out because I literally forgot it every single time. I would hit F5, fire an event, curse a lot, stop it, do it again, and then go, oh, I forgot to wire up my endpoint. So if you find that situation happening where you're like, Brady said it would work, it was easy. He made it look so easy. You've probably forgotten this line of code. So
that sounds basically how I wind up doing my development as well. Is I'll forget something really silly. I'll go ahead and start it. It doesn't work. I'll curse. Then I'll assume, oh, it must have built wrong. It must have been the compiler that went wrong. Let me just try it again without changing any code. It'll work this time.
I call that insanity, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I do have two real quick questions that bubbled up from Bruce in the chat. The first is, since you've got the server-side code up, I'll ask the server-side first, which is there a C++ version of SignalR?
I'm so glad you asked that question. That's the major thing we're doing in .NET 6. Is we are actively working on a C++ client. It is currently being used by at least 2 very large partner teams in Microsoft. I'll leave it at that. One of them is gaming. One of them is not gaming. So we actually do have a C++ client coming in the .NET 6 wave. .NET 6 is coming out in November, every November. So you will have your C++ client. You can already party on it now. It's already out in the repos. You can probably see Brennan Conroy's pull requests on it and all the different work we're doing on it. We have a couple of other folks who are actively building apps against that client as we're working on it. That gets tricky. We do not have an iOS client, and I can tell you why. Because I asked, let's go with 100 people. And 50 of them said that they wanted a Swift client and would never use Objective-C. And the other 50 said they wanted an Objective-C client and would never use Swift. So I said, cool, I'll give you a C++ client. You can do whatever you want with it. So, there's also a Python client, which was contributed by the open source community. The reason that we can get the open source community to contribute those clients is when we redid SignalR under .NET Core, the first thing we did was write its own protocol. So SignalR is literally there's a documented protocol in the repo. I could find that for your show notes. So if you wanted to go out and build a Rust client, you could do that just by reading the protocol and implementing your own client. And I know that because I've seen 2 people do it. So I've seen an experimental Go client pop up in a meeting one day and an experimental Rust client pop up in a meeting one day. keyword experimental. But there is a Python client that you can party on, and there is a Swift client for SignalR that was actually contributed by a former dev on the SignalR team that you can go find pretty easily. It's actually the one that David Fowler, recommends people use if they need a Swift client and they need it right now. He recommends that you take a look at the open source Swift client because it does work pretty well.
Okay. How about Java? That was one I noticed you hadn't mentioned.
There's a Java client.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Cool. There is indeed a Java. Our big clients are .NET, JavaScript, and not in any particular order other than Brady's order. .NET, JavaScript, Java, and C++ is coming. The Java client we released, I guess it was like in 3.0, might have been 2.2. Can't remember. They're blurring together. But the Java client's kind of new. I've done some stuff with it. You can build Android apps with it. It's definitely pretty great. So take a look at it.
Okay. I dig that. And then the other question that he had going back to your browser code real quick, was about if there's an NPM module and if there's TypeScript support.
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yes. There is an NPM module. Actually just updated the old one, the framework one the other day, something small. But yes, you can go out to NPM. It's also on CDN.js. Let me actually do that for you real quick. CDN.js. And I want to thank the CDN.js people because they were super helpful getting stuff in there. I want to tell you how to search for it, though, because history reasons. The client's changed its name a little bit. You don't want ASP.NET SignalR. You want Microsoft SignalR. So you can see right here, Microsoft SignalR. If I click on that one, you can see that the default is going to be what our LTS of .NET is 3.1. But you can expand that and you can party on the current version 5.05. Or if you wanted to use one of these, you could actually use the new Preview 6.0 version that we're shipping later on this year. But those are in NPM. You could get out to NPM and take a look at those. Does it give me the link? No, it doesn't. That doesn't go to. That just goes to CDN.js, not to NPM. But yes, that comes from NPM. So yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have a music app that you're building.
Yes, I do. But there's a dark side to SignalR you haven't let me talk about yet.
Oh, okay. All right. There's a dark side to SignalR. All right. Let's talk about the dark side to SignalR.
So, and that's when I pull up the Move Ship demo. That's ship because I speak really fast. Say it carefully. And I have to give Damien credit. The Move Ship demo is totally stolen from a demo that he did called Move Shape, and that I went crazy on and actually made a Connect version of. But I want to show you the dark side of SignalR real quick. That's this. SignalR is as durable as is the connection. Now, what does that mean? Phones go through tunnels every day. What happens when you go through a tunnel? Can't talk to anybody. Can't look at your TikTok anymore. You can't tweet anymore. So basically this happens. Your connection will break. We can't bend space-time, but what we can do, sorry about the titling, this says automatic reconnections because PowerPoint. My apologies. Essentially what we did, let me not do that. Actually, I don't know how that happened. We'll make it purple, like dev purple. There we go. Sorry about that.
That's
a hack job. There we go. Dev purple. So you saw this code earlier. Var connection equals new SignalR hub connection. There was something that we added in, I think it was 3.0, called this little method here called with automatic reconnect. Now, in the super old days of SignalR, one of the things that we did was we would actually reconnect and then we would replay, which meant we had to store it all up, which meant your server used a lot of memory. So we stopped doing that. So that's one of the changes between SignalR framework, what we call SignalR OG, and SignalR Core, was we don't do replay anymore. And unless something interesting happens, we don't have a plan on doing replay anytime soon. So you need to do your own acts and you need to do your own replays. Just something to think about. But what we did add was the ability for you to do reconnection. And that's an idea for, like, you go into the tunnel, whenever you come out of the tunnel, your client will automatically reconnect. We also gave you 2 really great methods to help with that, on reconnecting and on reconnected. And the idea behind those methods is they give you an opportunity to kind of change, add logic to, do things, if you will, to basically change the UI to tell your user, something's down. I promise we'll get to the music yet. But
I believe it.
there's just not much there. I'm just not gonna lie. There's not much there to it yet. I just haven't, like I told you earlier, my JavaScript skills are not that great anymore. But essentially, this move ship demo, and I'll give you both of these repos. Like we talked about earlier, in this case, I switched it from all to others because we're going to move a shape around, and I don't necessarily want to bubble back to myself as I'm moving my ship, because that could create some choppy behavior, so you don't want to do that. So the idea behind move ship is, if I actually open this up here, let me pop open the browser. I just want to show you this real quickly. And what I'll do here is I'll just show you that essentially the way this works, if you want to clone the repo, is I just clicked on it and I can just move it around. Probably somebody else is moving it around too, which is fine. But what I'll do here is open up my debugging tools on the side. And you can see that I'm getting some stuff here. So audience, please let me do this real quick. So you'll see here SSE connected. You see how that in my log, this is basically the SignalR making the connection. There's a SignalR client making the connection, and the connection saying you don't have WebSockets enabled. So since you don't have WebSockets enabled, I'm going to back off and I'm going to use SSE. Now let me show you kind of an example from a couple of different things that we can do. And essentially what you'll see in my source code, if I were to go to my JavaScript code, and this is much easier. So if you want to learn how to kind of do all this stuff, this is much easier. And you also see with the with automatic reconnect, if you want to come up with your own back off kind of capability, you can provide an array of integers there, and that can help you control kind of how many tries you do before you go, I'm done, he's in a tunnel, or he's underground. But what you can also see here is in the simple, I've got a well-documented version of the code, ship moved. Here's where I'm reconnecting. And at this point, what I would do is I would actually turn the ship a different color to kind of tell you that things aren't going to work. And then whenever you are reconnected, we want to turn the ship on to show you that things will indeed work again. So what I could do here is flip back over to the browser, and you can see that, we are connected. But what I'll do is I'll bring this over. And this is the app service kind of configuration tab for this actual app. And you'll see I'm in the general settings area. And what I'll do here is I'll go down here and I'm going to turn WebSockets on. So you can see that I'm connected here using SSE because I don't have WebSockets turned on. So I'll turn it on. And just in case you don't use Azure Web Apps yet, I say yeah, because you will. What's going to happen here is that when I save this, I'm actually going to save a configuration change to that server farm for that particular web app running in cloud, and that will reset the app. That'll shut it off and shut it back on again because I'm making a pretty hard configuration change. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and hit save, and it's going to say it's going to turn off your site and turn it back on. So what do you think is going to happen over here is we're going to disconnect that client. So I'll hit continue and watch what happens. This worked earlier. There you go. Now you see that changed. And it's trying to reconnect right now, and now it's reconnected, but you can see what happened. Now it's connected with a WebSocket. So if I zoom in on that, can I do that? So you see here I was SSE, then I disconnected. Now I'm connected with the WebSocket. If I were to flip it back again, let me go over here, general settings, go here and turn WebSockets off, which will restart the site and flip it back into SSE mode, which means that my client's going to get disconnected, and then it's going to tell me that it's disconnected so I don't try to move this thing around, and then it's going to reconnect, and now you can see that we're reconnected over SSE again.
Okay.
That makes sense?
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Cool. I definitely wanted people to kind of get that out of it, and you wanted to see the music app. So
I do, but I do have one quick question that actually came in, which I think is a good one. Timebender360 asked the question, is the pub sub service going to replace SignalR, and is it the new way to create real-time communications apps, especially using .NET 5/6?
I'm glad you asked. The pub sub service.
I have a really well-connected audience.
Pretty good. That's actually really, really well connected, because I had like the intro slide, on Azure Pub Sub in a minute. The Azure SignalR service and the Azure Pub Sub service are very closely aligned. I would not say that you're going to just like move all your stuff from Azure SignalR to Azure Pub Sub. Azure Pub Sub, to give you kind of a my experience history story with it, and it's not very long. We had a couple of customers who had WebSocket protocols that were not SignalR, and they wanted to use the SignalR service because they knew the SignalR service speaks WebSockets. So I remember getting the email, and essentially the customer said, I really, really like the idea of using the Azure SignalR service for WebSockets, but I don't want to use SignalR. I was like, did you notice the name of the service is the Azure SignalR? So that got David thinking, and that got the Azure SignalR service team thinking. And together they kind of worked on a couple of prototypes, and they basically started exposing a WebSocket connection without actually having to do the SignalR stuff. So it's essentially what that other protocol needed. Now there are a lot of WebSocket-based protocols out there that will benefit from the Azure Pub Sub service because they don't want to use our protocol; they want to use their protocol over WebSockets. You have to think about it. WebSockets is the transport, not the protocol.
Right.
You write your own protocol and you send it over WebSockets. So there are a bunch of different protocols out there. Believe me. So this is really good for those protocols. I'm not going to tell you that you don't want to do WebSockets explicitly, because there's a lot of good reasons to do so. But there are a lot of folks who wanted to do WebSockets without doing SignalR, and the Pub Sub service is definitely for those folks. I am very new to the Pub Sub service. I just have only heard Fowler talking about it since the release day. So I don't have a lot of experience on it. Can't really go deep into it here. But if you're doing stuff with your SignalR clients, and if you are doing stuff with SignalR hubs, the Azure SignalR service is definitely always going to be there for you. So,
okay, perfect. Cool. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Yep. Now, especially since we've only got about 15 minutes left, let's see a music app.
Oh, it's terrible. It's awful. So I will say this Friday, I'm going to be on a different show, a show that is highly, highly intimidating for me, called the 425 show with Christos Matskas and Katie. And they basically talk a lot about the Microsoft Identity platform and how you can use like Microsoft Identity Web, different AAD to authenticate your users and everything. And Christos is my neighbor, also a great friend, as is that whole partner team. So we're going to go on the show and basically talk about how to create an authenticated SignalR connection, because SignalR supports auth the same way Web API supports auth and everything else in ASP.NET supports auth. I started working on this code, and I did not get it to a point where I could actually transmit over SignalR. But the next time you have me on the show, I promise you that I will have, if not by Friday when I'm on the show, or the 425 show with those guys. So what I'll do here, I'm getting verified for some reason. Kill that for now. I'm just going to do a .NET run on this, and what you will see happen is I'm just going to open up a very ugly UI in my browser. And it's literally the idea behind this is I have a lot of different, you can see the guitars over here. There's a lot of synthesizers and drum machines kind of behind my keyboard that you can't see right here. This is just irritating me. Okay, there we go. Looks like it's building. And what I like to do is to just sit over here, and I don't know if you can hear this stuff happening, but it's drum beats. And then some horrible sounds like that acid run, kind of thing. And when the pandemic started, I had a bunch of friends that I was hanging out with, and we were like online in Teams, and we were trying to share our music stuff, and it was really not easy. Like, you got latency. Musicians hate latency. And just the reason why I would want to build a music app using SignalR is I refuse to do a chat app. So there's that. So this is like the musician's equivalent of a chat app. So really what I want to do is I want to have a scenario where like myself, I can be here and I can like upload some songs or some, not songs, but some samples. And you can be sitting over there. Maybe we can be in a studio together. Like that'll be a group. So that like the idea would be you and I enter the studio, kind of like we are right now for this kind of a recording. And that would be your connection and my connection go into a SignalR group. And then what I would do is I would pick, one of my numerous sound devices here, and I'll go with the it's annoying, right? So I'll go ahead and go with the Scarlett 8i6 USB because that's what this thing is plugged into. And what I'll do is I'll play a couple of horrible clips, if you will. And the way I'll do this, I'll just hit record, and then I'll go like this. So that's done. And I'll hit stop, and we'll just call this Acid Run. Now, you probably won't hear this because it's going to come through my computer speakers, but if I hit this, so you can probably hear that going. And now what I would want to do is hit upload. Now, let me show you how far I've gotten with upload. I've gotten as far as to figure out that I can basically get the byte stream of that audio file directly out of the media player. And I would imagine that at this point, I would either like send that up to a web API controller and like persist it into like an Azure Blob storage, or I would do something really dumb, like just serialize it, send it to another client, or send it back to the server and then have the server bounce it out and send it to another client, that kind of thing. So, I am very interested if anybody out there in your, viewing audience has done anything with like JavaScript's audio APIs, because I have done very little. And I could share this in a GitHub repository later on today, because I would love some feedback. Because, essentially what I want to do is, that's, one set of samples, and then I might want to do a different one. So I would hit record here again. Stop.
It's got a good beat, but I can't dance to it.
Exactly, yeah. So I can hit stop here. Oh, wait. I'll do this. I'll give you a better beat. That's better. That's better. But so that one would have the beat. But essentially what I would want to do is have somebody sitting on that side. And I could hit, okay, I like that. I'll upload it. They'll download it into their device. They'll do something with it, and then they'll upload something, and then we can collaborate. Real time is like not a possibility when it comes to like jamming live. There have been a bunch of tools that have tried to do it. Another colleague of mine from Microsoft, he and I have experimented with streaming MIDI data over SignalR. And we've gotten really close. Like we can actually stream the MIDI data over a SignalR hub from a MIDI device. But what we want to do is pump it back into another MIDI device and then have it play. So we could actually play together. But there's all kinds of things with that. There's a known latency tolerance of 7 milliseconds before a trained musician can hear a difference in tempo. That's somebody who's not a drummer. I am a drummer. I'm pretty sure that the drummer tolerance is like 3 milliseconds. So if you can imagine having to transmit even a 3-bit set of data from here to Florida in real time, it's not exactly easy. So we're definitely experimenting with it. But what I would do is I would ask you, there's one last thing I want to show you. There's always one last thing with every SignalR demo. So what I'll do, and this won't work for me because I've got, I'm currently using my camera, but I've gone to streamer.azurewebsites.net. And what this does is it actually, and I can't stream, so somebody else is going to have to, and we'll have to put them on screen. But what this does is it will grab a hold of your camera, the image that your camera sees, and it will take photographs in real time. It'll do video in real time. And what it will do with that video is transmogrify, that's a technical word, that video into ASCII. And it will transmit that ASCII to the server, and then the server will stream all those ASCII bits back out to all the connected clients in real time. So Christopher, don't do anything offensive, but what I can do now is I can hit watch stream, and hopefully
It
looks like it's not going to work.
it didn't ask me what camera it wanted.
That's the problem. It needs to be like the front facing camera. So
Yeah.
that's the issue.
Let me see.
Let's try it like this. What if we could do it on the phone?
Oh, there you go.
Try that. This one. Oh, we could watch. Ethan, don't offend us. Oh, that one's not coming in. Let me refresh. You're not coming in. Let me try it here. Brady Mobile. Allow. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. But
Chucks.
try it yourself. Try it yourself. It will work. We've actually done this demo with Hanselman a few times. He enjoys it. It's really one of the funner demos. I just can't do it because my camera's in use by like 14 other devices at the moment. So my apologies. We're not getting anybody else's coming in, so I don't know what's going on. But this actually uses the streaming, the new streaming APIs for SignalR, so you can actually stream stuff in real time. And that uses the new iAsync enumerable. So you can basically do an await for each.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry it won't work. Let's try this. There.
Oh. Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
So thank you to whoever did that.
Yeah, no, it's me. So there is there's my office all in ASCII. Yeah.
I'll see you. There you are now.
Yeah.
I see twice now. That's cool. So there's Christopher in ASCII in real time. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That is a really cool little demo. I dig it.
Yeah, it was really cool. Hanselman did this. I guess it was like for Connect or something. And when he did this, he actually added. He hasn't sent me a pull request yet, which is still annoying me.
Yeah.
But they actually added the rear-facing camera too, so you could actually do either or. We just haven't gotten a pull request. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Again.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Yeah. So I do have kind of a one last big question, which is when is that 425 show?
That 425 show is going to be on this Friday, really early in the morning Pacific Coast time, like about 8 o'clock Pacific Coast time, I believe. And that's the 425 show.
And that's on the Microsoft Developer Twitch, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
I believe it is. If not, I can get you the URL. And if anybody wants them, I'll make sure Chris gets both of these demos that I did today. I can try to get the streamer repo as well. You can find it. It's been out there for a while. But I'll try to get you both of the links to these repos. They're both public, and you can try them out. So yeah, you can definitely give it a shot. Let us know what you think. Feel free to send a pull request. And I'm sure my devs will probably pick on something I'm doing wrong with async await, because I tend to do that. Probably got an async void somewhere. Sorry. So.
We did actually have somebody earlier comment on the fact that your 3D demo was using jQuery.
Yeah, I haven't updated it in a while.
That's all right. Hey, I'm still kind of a fan of jQuery. It's fine.
It's easy. It's easy. It's easy. I'm getting into Vue. Vue's been a lot of fun, and your show with Jen Looper the other day was fantastic, because I'm actually I mentioned earlier I'm trying to learn Tailwind. So I'm actually I watched her show and got really excited about it, because she has some great examples in there. So I'm really looking forward to changing a lot of the stuff. I really want to use Tailwind with Recorder. That's what I call it. But if you build a chat app, if you build a chat app, you build a SignalR app, you have to just call it whatever it is with an R at the end. So. I can't believe that Freudian slip. Fowler will never let me live that one down. So.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right. And people can find you on Twitter at Brady Gaster, which is just up above your head. And then I will throw all of the various links to the docs here out into... Oh no! Actually, I'll go grab it and I'll paste it in just a second here. But yeah, so
I can give it to you. It's great. It's aka ms/signalr/docs.
/what?
Docs.
Docs. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's nice and easy. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Brady, thank you so much for coming on, showing about SignalR. This was a lot of fun. I definitely picked up a couple of things which I actually didn't know, and it's also just great to see C# that I came up as a C# developer. I've now found myself doing an awful lot of TypeScript and Python, but like my first love is still C#. So it's always great to see C# and ASP.NET and SignalR. It's still such a really cool technology that initial giddiness of like, oh my gosh, this just works, is still there.
It is great. It is great. Just remember that automatic reconnection. That's the only thing. The thing I tell everybody is, that one message you don't want to lose will be the one you lose. Be responsible.
That, and don't forget to register your hub.
Right. Yeah, don't forget to register your hub. For the love of God. So yeah, and you don't need jQuery anymore. I have to say that. Like, you used to need jQuery to do SignalR. You do not need it at all. You can, So I just have to call that out.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. This is Web Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday, he said, again in English, to chat about typically different things web dev related, although next week is going to be a little bit special. We're going to bring Chloe Condon on and answer a bunch of questions about getting in and getting started as a developer. So if you're, new to the industry or thinking about getting in, Chloe definitely has a lot of stories that she can tell. And it's going to be just an awful lot of fun to have that conversation. So so tune in next week. And thanks again, Brady, and we'll see everybody later. Bye.
Thanks a lot.